What did your partner do that made you suddenly understand they weren't right for you? Before we start with the first story, please hit a subscribe and ring the notification bell to stay updated with us. Story 1. We were fighting all the time. I'd try to leave and he'd love bomb me. At some point, I just asked him to make some effort to treat me with some kindness. He replied that he refused to do that because it would be a lie. I realized that at the most basic level, he just didn't like me, but thought of me as a toy he didn't want to lose. Story 2. We were walking to a restaurant and casually chatting. I offhand tried to remember what I was up to a couple of days prior. It made sense in the context of the conversation. He cut me off and said, probably sleeping in and doing nothing all day. It was just a jab to be hurtful. No lead up to it at all. Not that it should matter, but I had a credit card, car, and the lease on our house all in my name. He had none of those. He worked part-time as a server but couldn't support himself. I paid all our bills. He didn't want to be on the lease because he didn't want to feel tied down. He was deeply insecure, and I guess it just came out. He needed to knock me down a peg when he got the chance. I dumped him over dinner at the restaurant. Story 3. It wasn't my partner, but a friend. I was venting about my then-boyfriend to a friend I didn't see too often when she stopped me and asked, "Do you even like him as a person? Would you be his friend if you weren't dating?" We broke up shortly after. It was an eye-opening question. Story 4. Dated a woman for a year. The day she was to start moving in with me, she told me my cat had to go. I told her that wasn't going to happen. She told me I had to choose, her or the cat. I told her goodbye. Never saw her again. Story 5. Became abusive after our son was born, especially after going through IVF with donor sperm because he was sterile. It's a kind of betrayal that I never expected, and my divorce was finalized today, after being separated for a year and a half. Good riddance. Story 6. He was living with me at my parents' house when he fell on tough times. One day he was using my laptop to check emails and left for work. He didn't log out. So when I used my computer, I saw he had emails from his new coworker who was a lesbian, LOL. Nothing crazy, just flirty emails and some selfies. Still staring at his inbox. I called him to confront him about it, and as soon as I started talking about my findings, I saw the emails disappearing one by one, probably deleting them from his phone in the moment. Then, denial, denial, denial. That was the last time that boy ever took me for a fool, LOL. Story 7. When I walked outside the pub and saw her making out with a complete stranger. 4 years down the drain, but at least I dodged the bullet of marrying her. Thankfully, I've met a much better woman since then. Story 8. Even though he claimed otherwise, his encouragement was manipulation and putting me down. They gave me massive anxiety and second-guessed myself constantly. I ended the relationship in December and I'm working on bettering myself. First, with a new job, getting out of retail, and now I'm going to start working at a hospital in April. Story 9. We had been long distance for 5 years and were finally living together, BC. I had decided to move to the city he was living in. Every single day I was grateful to wake up next to him in the morning and go to sleep with him at night without having to say goodbye anymore. He applied for a new job in a city 2.5 HRs away from where we lived and only told me about it when he was already about to accept the offer. I tried to be supportive, but I felt so lonely throughout the week when he was gone in a city that wasn't even my home to begin with. That was a 6-year relationship down the drain that I thought was going to last forever. Story 10. He, who at the time was homeless and jobless and living in his car with his dog, told me, who lived in a nice townhome with roommates, worked full-time, and was going to school for my bachelor's, that I really needed to get my life together. He was a manipulative and gaslighting loser who didn't deserve the 6 months he got with me. Story 11. I was working 2 jobs to get ahead. I was secretly trying to pay the house off in 7 years. I did. I wanted it to be a surprise. We hit a rough patch and I found out that she hadn't paid our property taxes in over a year. When I asked, I got vague responses. She decided to get a bunch of cosmetic dentistry done and buy some things and just decided that I should pay it without even telling me she was behind. Just like, you. I'm not going to pay anything anymore. We had bills we agreed to pay, etc. Then COVID hit. Over that year, many things I believed to be true were revealed as false or straight-up lies. She accepted responsibility for nothing. It became glaringly obvious that I had married and had a child with someone who had completely misrepresented themselves and didn't have the tenacity to keep up the ruse under that long of scrutiny and confinement. COVID. It was so ridiculous one night that I went downstairs to sleep. I never returned. So now I live downstairs, Mill Suite, and we co-parent a teen as I prep to go my separate way. I don't even know who she is anymore. I wish she would have cheated. I would be able to wrap my head around it. Just a manipulative liar. Freaking sad. Story 12. This was in high school. He was a year older than me, and about to go into his senior year. I asked what he was planning to do after graduation. He told me he was going to travel with his band. I was surprised, as we'd been friends a while before dating, and I'd never heard about his band. Turns out his plan was to start one and then travel LOL. I knew then we had different goals in life. Another guy was just so rude to his sweet mom, it immediately gave me the ick. She was the nicest lady, and he was such a little shit to her. We were on a road trip, me, him, and his parents, and we made a stop at a museum. He was in his PJ pants still, so she asked him very nicely to put on jeans. He flipped out. I ended up cutting him off and yelling at him to stop being so disrespectful to his mom and to put on some damn pants, lol. Broke up with him when we got back. Story 13. There were other factors, but she wondered if she should allow me to go on an overseas trip that had been planned and paid for well before I met her. We broke up. I went on the trip and met the person who I am still married to. Edit. Some people seem to have missed my point, or I made it badly. But the breakup was due to the controlling language and insecurities that were an ongoing feature of the relationship. I felt that it was the final red flag that was not conducive to a healthy relationship. Edit 2. In the interest of brevity, I left out the context of the person that I got together with. We lived interstate and stayed in touch for several years before we got together. We were a long-distance couple for about 7 years before we moved in together. Story 14. He gleefully told me about how he screamed at some teenage cashier at a restaurant because she accidentally double-charged him. He told me it felt good to yell at someone who actually deserved it. He went on about how mean he was to her, how he yelled at her. He was so happy. My jaw was on the floor. I'm the one he screamed at all the time for 5+ years, and he accidentally confessed to knowing that I didn't actually deserve it. I'm not saying that that poor kid did because fucking yikes. Of course she didn't. That alone might have even been enough if I allowed myself to be honest with myself. But it was the magical phrase, "It felt good to yell at someone who actually deserved it," that cured me. Whatever was wrong with my brain that caused me to stay in what I already knew was an abusive relationship, it immediately corrected itself and I was done. Suddenly I got a tidal wave of ick that was a long time building. I'm so ashamed I stayed with that man for as long as I did. I'm so glad it's over. Story 15. Almost a year after splitting up, we were talking again and trying to work through some stuff to see if it was even fixable. One thing I had a problem with was, from my perspective, him emphasizing that he didn't intend to do X whenever I pointed out that something was H. Hurtful, problematic, manipulative, misogynistic, etc. For example, I didn't intend to hurt you when I blew off our plans and kept you waiting all night. I explained it in every way I could think of, hoping he could see how such statements were nothing but an attempt to soothe what little sense of guilt he had while invalidating my experience. When he did it, he was co-opting his so-called apology for personal gain and torpedoing any real apology with these statements. Then flipping the apology I was supposed to get on me and framing it with the expectation that I soothe him and validate his desire to not feel guilt for being because in his world. He could be worse. He could be shitty on purpose. But only he got to decide what that looked like. Once in a while, sure, it's okay to say I didn't intend to. We all do it, and once in a while it is genuinely heartfelt and relevant. This dude said it for every thing, and the worse the act was, the more he harped and harped and harped on it. He said it so much and so often that he was obviously crying wolf, which was largely the problem. Eventually, he said he'd stop doing it and understood that impact greater than intent. Maybe we were making progress? Nope. Fast forward a few weeks and I asked him to tell me about his intentions in being interested in continuing to talk to me. I knew and I explained exactly what I was after, but what about him? For him, where did he want this to go? The dude could not understand the difference between talking about intentions in each set of circumstances. He refused to tell me proactively what his intentions for me were. Dog. The former is about your attempt to control the narrative and how you absolutely lose your marbles when you can't control what? People think of you and see you for the charismatic snake you are, and they don't let you decide the parameters of what that looks like. If you don't like what I did or how that felt, it was an accident. I didn't intend to. The latter is about being held accountable for your actions and not getting away with wasting someone's time, which you would then claim you never intended to do when called out for it after you did it. It's literally the difference between being intentional and unintentional negligent, two things that couldn't be more different. As I sat there fuming over how this dude either had no shame to the point of willingly playing stupid to antagonize me, or legitimately lacked the intelligence to understand the difference between the two. I realized we really were reading from two different sheets of music and it was not going to work. Then, he played the "but I'm a progressive good guy. How dare you think feminist progressive good guys can't laugh at and proliferate misogynistic jokes? We're still feminist" card one last time, and I quit, because I knew that we'd be having the same convo on intentions all over again. He expected me to compartmentalize my image concept of him and ignore what he actually did, said, laughed at, etc. And instead see him the way he saw himself, as a good guy with good intentions whose entire life and the warpath of damage he did to women along the way was some giant f***ing accident that couldn't possibly be. An accurate reflection of his lack of morals and character. Trying to work through his logic and the mental gymnastics he used in creating his self-image was the most exhausting shit I've ever done. That year and change I pissed away trying to unravel that skein of f***ed-upness is literally the only regret I have in my life. Alright folks, that's a wrap. If you like more of this, please hit a thumbs up and subscribe to the channel. You can also share your thoughts in the comment below. I'll see you in the next video.